Welcome to today's edition of Feet to the Fire, where we're always challenging the status quo. For more cutting-edge commentary, go to feettothefire.org. That is feet, the number 2, thefire.org. And now your host.
All right, welcome, everyone. Here we are moving ahead with our Feet to the Fire program. And last program, we began to address what is America? What is her form of government, and how is she defined? If we are going to defend our civilization, we need to know what we are defending. And, unfortunately, there's a lot of ignorance surrounding this question. And the answer certainly dictates the scope of our challenge. And last time, we decided that we are not a democracy in a pure sense. Majority rules, or what we would term populism, is a mindless and primitive political exercise, and it is a serious threat to liberty. We also noted that the ruling class, or the political elite, are pushing this democratic ideal because populism is a fertile ground for coercive cultural revolution. The populist uprising is essentially an awakened mob that can be manipulated for good or evil. This is the idea behind community organizers. For example, Saul Alinsky, who wrote Rules for Radicals, he was a mentor actually of President Obama, and the whole idea is to foment anger and dissension and upheaval and get the masses moving in a particular direction. Populism. Incidentally, the introduction of his book, Rules for Radical, dedicates that book to Lucifer, Satan, who he calls the very first radical. Which doesn't sound to be great reading material for the president of the free world. But again, that's where you're at with this idea of populism or democratic idealism. So we're going to continue holding educators and historians' feet to the fire for not teaching the accurate picture of American government. So let's see if we can answer this concisely. What is America? Grand pause. We are a confederated constitutional republic. Confederated constitutional republic. I know, it should have been something a little bit more flashy. That's right, it sounds nerdy, and it is. It's very nerdy. Learn it, love it, and remember it. Why do we not value nerds and sophistication anymore? Where did all the nerds go anyway? We should be sophisticated. When we talk about our country, when we defend our country, we need to start getting sophisticated. The establishment wants us not to know or care about fancy words and fancy meanings. They would just rather pull the wool over our eyes. We're the ignorant country class, and in the midst of our slumber of ignorance, we don't realize that our freedom is being snatched away right out from under us. So we need to pay attention. We need to know this stuff. And the intention here is that you never forget. And if you do, listen to the podcast again. We are a confederated constitutional republic. Now, while my liberal, politically correct comrades pick themselves up off the floor after frothy-mouthed convulsions for having heard me use the horrendous word Confederate, which conjures up notions of the evil Deep South, we will attempt to bring a clear definition to each of the three parts, and in so doing, this will present a complete and sophisticated picture of what we are, so that we can stop allowing the left to redefine our national identity and our liberties. So the first thing, we are a confederation of states. What does that mean? Well, it's not a curse word, although the left would have you believe that. So much so that it's actually been struck out of our political discourse. You really don't hear that word anymore. That's what they like to do, redefine, twist, misrepresent language and arguments in order to confuse and manipulate the debate. But confederation simply means a grouping of divided government. Let's break it down. Con means with. Federalism, which means divided government, as in spheres of authority or power, with federalism, with divided government. An example would obviously be independent state governments versus and distinct from a national government. Federalism prevents consolidation of power into one place. It prevents encroachments from one sphere of government into another. Now, hopefully this is clicking for you. This is the principle behind our existence as separate states. the whole 50 stars on the flag, rather than one singular identity, what would be one giant star on the flag. It is the first unique point of the American experience. We are not a singular country, but a confederation of sovereign states. Free and independent states loosely organized under a limited and distinct national authority. We are states that have agreed to enter into a social compact. So, on the one hand, we retain the rights and prerogatives of sovereign nations, and yet certain powers, better rendered at a collective level, have been delegated and surrendered to the federal government. And why confederation? Well, quite simply, it's restrictive against oppression, which we as Americans loathe and reject. I repeat, we as Americans reject consolidated power. Consolidated power has this legacy. It has always oppressed man. It is the thing that has unleashed genocide. It is what robs life and property, and always has in the history of mankind. We reject consolidated power. Now, a confederation is a prohibition against centralized authority, and it is also, in a positive sense, a preservation of independent, localized authority, what we would also term liberty. Did you know, and this is often overlooked in history now, what was the first founding document for nearly 12 years of our existence? Prior to the U.S. Constitution, it was the Articles of Confederation. And this formula, confederation, was innate to our initial conception, so much so that the U.S. Constitution nearly failed years later for the states' fear of losing this delicate feature to a much more potent federal government. They did not want to give up their individual sovereignty. Wow, look where we are now. The fact that the rebel South used that title years later in the 1860s during the Civil War is irrelevant to the fact that this is what we were and this is what we are. So here's the basic principle. We govern ourselves much better up close rather than being governed by some supreme ones far away. Do you understand that? And this is the philosophy behind states' rights, which the left hates, but which we will not yield as Americans. They hate it because states' rights impedes their agenda and their progress. It certainly slows down government and a populist movement. Think about it this way. Try getting 50 distinct units to come anywhere close to agreeing. That's liberty with prudent restraint. That's not populism. States' rights protects us from the central oligarchy of a federal leviathan. Now, that was a really fancy way to say the all-powerful state or the powerful few. It protects the many from the powerful few. But on the other hand, the liberals love the federal government because the larger that gets, the greater it impedes the authority of the states, and the closer you get to exterminating liberty in notion and in practice. Listen, a confederation is central to the American identity. We are these United States. Now, does that sound familiar? Or maybe not. Or maybe it actually sounds antiquated. It's because the statesmen of old used to call us that, these United States, a plurality, but not anymore. Now it's the United States. See, these United States doesn't suit the new national order of swallowing the state's identity up into the massive whole, which is what the ruling class wants. Kill the individual, kill the local government, exalt the behemoth national identity. But the plurality of our independent statehood is enshrined in our documents and in our heritage. Do you remember the Declaration of Independence? How it closes? It says, these united colonies are and of right ought to be free and independent states, plural, the many, e pluribus unum, out of many one. We are many under one government, confederation. All right, I'm done. That took longer, but that's the first aspect of our triple threat of American liberty. So, in conclusion, keep your liberty close and your tyrants far away and tiny. That's a confederation. Next time we'll hit the others, hopefully. But until then, let justice roll down like waters, America, and righteousness like an ever-flowing stream. Don't believe the hype out there. Open your mouth. Be a nerd. Know your stuff. And let's hold their feet to the fire.